So yes, we can comment. The recording has started. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. So guys, thank you so much for coming on board once again. And today we want to advance from where we left last time. And today is going to be like Python fundamentals, or maybe the basics. I want us to have that refresher for those who are beginners. I know during the application, most of you say that you are experts. There are some who are intermediate, but we also had those who are completely beginners. So we want to have that refresher. And let me share the screen first. Just a second. Are you able to see the screen?
Okay, I can now see your screen, Mr. Nehemiah.
All right, great. So last time, I think, let me just share the entire screen so that I'll not struggle to back and forth. Let me just share the entire screen. And then just a second. Let me just share the entire screen to be easier for me to navigate.
We can see your screen.
All right. Thank you so much. So, guys, I want us to today we are going to learn about Python, basically the basics or fundamentals, like to bring the beginners up to speed. But then yesterday, as we wait for more people to join, we had just downloaded. I told you guys to download Anaconda, but then I want to show you how you can access the Jupyter notebook, because in this one, we are going to work with the notebooks. And yesterday I told you how you can access the notebook directly with the pip install. You install the notebooks and access the notebook directly. And for those whose systems were having issues, I gave you another option to use the online version. This one you don't need to install anything. It's just accessible like a free, provided you have the internet connection. And then the other option, perhaps you are having a good computer, but then you want to just use the notebook. And then the best software that we recommended was the Anaconda environment. So basically, we installed the Anaconda yesterday. I told you guys to install. And when you install the Anaconda, it's going to come with the navigator. It's like now the graphical user interface for Anaconda, where you can have all the programs in it. And if you want to access it, you go to your apps, and then you just search for Anaconda. I think it's here. Then you click here on open, because for me, I've already opened. And you'll have this kind of an interface. You could choose to sign in, sign up, but let me close it for now. And you will see several programs installed here, or maybe recommended for you to install. Here, like including the notebook. You can see the notebook is somewhere here. There's notebook here. Now, if you don't see notebook here on the landing, what you'll do, you'll go to the environments. And first of all, yesterday I told you that the goodness of working with the Anaconda environment. Okay, Anaconda, you can do it. You can create environments, because I might have programs that are running on a particular version of Python, and then there's another running on different versions. So this one allows you to create a version of this, like to create environments. And to create the environments, you just click here, and then you are going to create the new environment. It's going to prompt you like just obvious steps. For example, the environment name, and then the version of Python. Now, in the event, for example, you're using the Anaconda, this one allows you to, like, you can install different version of Python in the system. Like you can install the latest, for example, that 3.12, 3.11, 3.10, or a previous versions. But then you'll be selecting, for example, you say this environment is running this program. There's another interpreter, Python interpreter that's running another program like that. But here, because we just installed one version of Python, and that is the default environment that is going to create here. It is the root. Like this one is using the system directly. That's why you can see here the home. I have programs like this VS Code. You can see it's telling me to launch because I already have it. Anaconda, these things. This Jupyter Notebook because I already have it in the system. Something like a Visual Studio Code and all that. You don't need to install these things, but then because it's now using the root, it's going to pick automatically programs which are installed at your system, the system level, at the root level. Otherwise, you could go to the environments and then just search for switch here from installed to all, and then you can install, like you can search for any program, and then you're going to install. Okay. So now, for example, if like at the moment you can see we have the notebook here at the root, but then assuming that we don't have it here at the root, what you're going to do is to go to the environment tab, and then search for, select first of all this drop down, change it to all, change the filter here to all, and then search here notebook like that, and then when you click enter, then it's going to do a quick search here. Let me yeah, notebook is here. When it is ticked, it means that it's already installed. So if it is already installed, remember if it's not installed, you will click somewhere. For example, if you want to install something, you will click on it, and then it's going to give you like other options to install. But I don't want to do that. But in the event, for example, the notebook wasn't here, you could have clicked the checkbox, and then you go, like it's going to show you like some extra buttons or some steps to install it. So it's just straightforward. But then once you have it installed, then to run it, you just click on this play button here. Just click on it, and then it's going to open this drop down. Then click here, open with Jupyter Notebook. First of all, you'll be at the home. Then by default, you go to the environments, and then you select here, you change the drop down to all, and then you go to the search and then search for notebook. If you see it is installed, like it is checked like this, and then know that you have the notebook. If you don't have it, like let me assume you want to install something like this, you can see when you click on it, it's going to give you an option to install. I think this thing is trying to so it's going to like, once you select it, then you click on apply, then it's going to install it. For me, I don't want to install it, but that's how you could have installed the program. In the event, for example, it wasn't there, but then you click on this play button, then it's going to open this other drop down. Then you click here, open with the Jupyter Notebook. So this one is going to open where it's going to open on your default browser. But then remember, even though it's opening on your browser, like this one is going to work as your server, or maybe an environment that is running that Jupyter Notebook. So this is Anaconda. When the Jupyter Notebook is opening on your browser, don't close this Anaconda. Don't close this Anaconda Navigator, because you have the programs. Like yesterday, you saw when we were launching or maybe opening the Jupyter Notebook, there was a program that was running. So this one acts as a server, a local server or environment for your program. So if it's running, remember behind the scenes, there's some program that are running for you to be able to view it or see it in the browser. Otherwise, don't close it. So it's going to redirect you to your default browser, and then select where you want to place your project. Find where you want to place your project. Find where you want to place your project. I said it's good to be organized. So you could choose, for example, to go to the documents or desktop. And then first, let me try to delete these things. These are the, let me just remove these unnecessary folders. And then, so you are going to, if you want to create a new folder, let me zoom in so that you can see well.
Hi, Mr. Nehemiah, could you please go over that again? I think somebody said, will you please repeat it, sir, in the comment section? Edit. I don't know what you want him to repeat, but can you indicate in the comment section Also, Femi, can you use the comment section to ask your question? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Let me repeat everything. So first of all, yesterday I said that you need to have Anaconda. I told you to install the Anaconda, where you can go to anaconda.com, and then you go to the downloads tab. I don't want to, so you go to this download tab, anaconda.com/download. Then you click this skip registration, or you can choose to register. And then what you do, you'll download for your operating system. And then you are going to install, like the installation process, it is similar to any open source program application. So when you install it, and then you open, by default, it's going to take you to this landing. So this is the Anaconda navigator. Like when you just open it, this is like at the home page. That's going to take you, and then it's going to list for you some apps. So the apps that you already have it in the system, it's going to tell you launch. But then the apps that you don't have is going to tell you install. It's going to list several applications here, the recommended applications. But then for this case, we are only interested in, you remember, you don't have to install everything. Just install what you are interested in. Like at this point, we are only interested in the notebook, the Jupyter notebook. And because for me, it's already installed. That's why I can easily access it here. I can see on the landing here, it says launch. Otherwise, if it's not there, what you do, you go to the environments. You can see at the moment it is at the home. You click here the environments, and you click here the environments. And if you haven't created any environment, so it's going to use like at the root environment. And I told you yesterday that the advantage of working with the Anaconda, this one allows you to work with different Python interpreters. Like at the moment at this time we're using Python 3.12, but the Anaconda will allow you, for example, if you install several versions or different versions of Pythons, you can create an environment for those versions so that you can have programs that are running at, for example, 3.12. Then there's another environment you create that could run on another version of Python, like that. So that, for example, if you have projects that are very dependent on a particular version, you'll not have to reconfigure everything, adjust the everything. So this one you can just run like in a specific environment. So when you click here, create, I don't want to do this because it's going to, but then, for example, let's try. Let me see if it can be quick. So for example, if I want to create a new environment, first of all, you'll be at the home, you'll go to the environments, and then here at the very bottom, there's create. Perhaps you could say, for example, Python or whatever name it is, for example, Python 3.11 or 12 or whatever it is, like that. And then here you select, you can see at the moment it's listing several versions of Python, different versions. And because it is telling me 3.12, because this one is like my default. This is the one that I installed in the system. Otherwise, when you click this drop down, you can notice that you have other version that stretches all the way to 3.13. So this one you can create, for example, for 3.13, and then you can click here, create, and then it's going to take a lot of time to, to create that environment. And then once it's done, you can install programs on that. But then at the moment, we're just focusing on this root because I've installed Python in the root, only one version, and I don't want it to be very complicated for you. So let's just focus on this root. Okay, I think I made a mistake to create an environment because I'll have to wait for it to finish. But as I wait for it, I can say the advantage of working in this environment, or maybe creating several environments, it will reach a situation where you have a program that is running on your computer. And then when you try to deploy somewhere, maybe on the cloud, you find out that it's not working. So client will be asking you, the system is not working, then you try to explain that it's working on my computer. That's a very lame excuse that I could give, perhaps to a client or maybe the organization. So that's the issue with these environments. So, and also in most cases, the servers mostly will support a stable version. you'll find out that perhaps it could not like support the latest version. So that's why I told you yesterday, it's always better to go with the stable version of these technologies, not the latest, because the latest sometimes needs patches, fixes, and all that. So go with the stable version. Now I see it as, I think it has complete. Okay, I thought it was done, but then once it has created, then you can do what you can you can get or maybe install the notebook on whatever environment it is. Like at this Python, you can tell it's running at I named it as 3.1.1, but at this version that I selected, it was a 3.1.3, this one. But then so now you can see it is fresh. I've selected here, you can see there's no application installed here. So if you want to search for notebook, you'll again click here in this drop down, select all, and then search for the notebook, click enter. And then once you see, when you scroll down, you'll see there's notebook here, notebook, and then you can click on the install. When you click on apply, then it's going to like install. It's going to install, but then let me cancel it because I don't want to go into that. I told you yesterday on how you can install, but then if you want to install this way, then you can take your time and try to attempt this process. I don't think it will be hard. In case it's hard, then let me know let us know in the community, so that we can even just do a tutorial for that. Because today it was strictly for Python, so that at least you may adhere to what we had told you in the outline in the 10-day onboarding. So this is how you can access the notebooks through the Anaconda environment. And then, for example, once it is installed, once you have the the notebooks installed, what you do, you'll be clicking on this play button. You'll just be clicking on the play button here, and then it's going to open a drop-down that says open with Jupyter Notebook. Open with the Jupyter Notebook. But for me, like I saw, like I had shown you earlier, but then let me see. Let me just just a second so that you can finish. Yeah, so once it's like this, first of all, you'll be at the home. Anytime you want to access, you click here, environment. In case it has collapsed, like I can't see that part for the environment, just click here and then it's going to open again. And then if you have installed the notebook on whatever environment, click the play button. And then it's going to say open with Jupyter Notebook. Then it's going to open on your default browser. It's going to open on your default browser. And when it opens on your default browser, what you need to do is you need to have like a directory. A directory is like a folder where you can like arrange your work, you can place your work instead of like just throwing everything, things everywhere. You can have a directory where you can place your projects. Like you can see here, it has opened at the root. But then you can choose, for example, to go to the desktop, to the documents. I noticed documents doesn't have a lot of folders, so I can go there. And then I can do what I can click here on the, for example, whatever folder. If it's new, you want to create a new one, you can click here, a new folder, and then we can name it, for example, Python introduction or whatever, or foundation. Python, like you give it something descriptive depending on the content, introduction, or Python, just Python, like that. So this is the folder. And then you are going to you are going to double click on it. You're going to double click, and then now to create the file, you click again the new, but then the same you'll be clicking on this Python 3. This is the interpreter we're using, Python 3 here. And then now when you click on it, then it's going to create a new notebook. Let me know if it's clear now. The one who asked. Someone is saying that I tried to download the Anaconda and it asked me to open an account. Must I know? In fact, I've also demonstrated without an account. So you can still access. You can see I haven't connected, but I can still access the Anaconda. They're just asking people to create an account so that at least they may have that community. But it's not mandatory, just an open source program. So you don't even need to sign in and share your data there. Provided you have installed, you can simply just use it. Okay, I see. Okay, yeah, thank you. I see it's clear now. Yeah, so guys, I want us to talk about Python. So this is the topic for today. I want us to have the Python introduction. Okay, like a Python fundamentals. And first of all, I'm going to give you like the roadmap. I want to give you the roadmap. I don't want us to do the college way, okay, the university way, where you're going to learn everything, you know, including the theories and all that. Now, let me give you a hint if you want to understand these programming languages. First of all, to remind you, we said that computer programming is instructing a computer to do a particular task. And to achieve that, because computers only understand the binary zeros and one, it doesn't understand our human language. So we usually use a programming language like a tool or a mediator that help us to like you know, like encode, or maybe how can you put it, like a translate our language. The computer will understand, and then it receives instruction.
Is it just me? I stopped hearing Mr. Nehemiah. Can anyone hear Mr. Nehemiah from the end? I also can't hear Mr. Nehemiah. I think we lost him for a minute. Let's just wait for some few minutes and see if he will be back. Maybe it's his internet.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, Mr. Nehemiah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. So, sorry about
Okay,
that. I think
we lost you for a minute there.
Sorry, my internet is disconnected. I don't know. Had I begun Python introduction before? Where was I disconnected? Let me share. Had I introduced, had I begun Python?
Okay, the disconnection is just like very few minutes, like 1 minute. It's not even up to 2 minutes. So yeah.
Oh, all right, great. So let me just quickly repeat. So we have understood that. Okay, like to just repeat what I said. Programming, like in data science, we are basically using programming techniques to achieve the programming, the machine learning and the AI task. And generally, before we get there, I said day one, yesterday, that computer programming is a way of instructing the computer to do tasks. Like the task that we humans could have done, now we want the computer to do that task for us. So that is the computer programming. You are instructing the computer to do those tasks. But then, because we cannot instruct the computer, like a computer do not understand our language, like it only understands numbers, binary values, zeros and ones. So we need to have something that is going to like encode our language in a way that it will understand, and then it's going to execute specify the result. For example, if it's web programming task, data science task, machine learning task, and all that. So we are using now these tools like a mediator now to help us like instruct the computers, and we are using the programming languages. So these act as mediators between the humans and the computer. But then remember some programming language like are designed for special task or maybe specific task, like for example, Python, I know it can work like in different fields. Like we can use Python on web development, especially in the server side. You can use it on the software development to perform complex mathematics, on system scripting, and many more. But then we can have others that are designed or they are more powerful on maybe web programming or whatever it is. So this programming language, it has its syntax. They usually have their syntax such that you need to follow those syntax so that when you want to instruct the computer but adhering to those syntax, then the computer will understand what you are trying to to request or ask it to do. So and in this case, because we are focusing on the artificial intelligence and machine learning, so the core technology that I will be using, or maybe programming language, the main that I will be using will be Python, because within Python we have all the data science packages, machine learning packages, we have deep learning packages, natural language processing packages, which are Python packages. So then Python is going to stand out or maybe become like at the core programming language for machine learning, artificial intelligence. And also we'll reach a point where we'll also learn about the model deployment, not on this onboarding, but then on the course itself. We'll have part where we'll learn about the model deployment. We'll be using frameworks like Django and Flask. Still they are Python packages or libraries for web programming on the server side. So you notice that Python is very, very powerful. It's very, very powerful. That's why I want us to begin with Python. And I told you earlier, like the easiest way to learn or maybe understand any programming language, for example, something like Python or JavaScript or any programming language, like it's very, very broad. You cannot even take 5 years to complete learning each of these programming language. But then the key thing or maybe the roadmap to understand these things, just to first of all, know how variables are defined in that programming language. Then the next thing, understand the data structures of that programming languages, and then also understand functions and algorithm functions. And then if it's an object-oriented programming like Python, try to understand also how classes are constructed or created, and their objects, their methods, and all that. So once you master those concepts, and then you can have additional like those inner methods or maybe supporting things. You can use it as you try to solve something. Otherwise, when you want to you are determined to just learn everything, including each definition of every word, all the methods, you might find yourself that you know a lot of these basic syntax or maybe variables or whatever it is, but then you can't do anything with it. So provided you just have that roadmap, then you can try to learn more as you do projects, but don't try to learn everything from the very scratch to the end, but just learn these things that I'm trying to tell you. Just learn the variables, how variables are created, just learn the data structures of that programming language, and then learn functions. And then if it's an object-oriented programming, learn classes and also the objects, how objects are created from that class, and all the methods, properties, and all those kind of stuff. And also another way is to also learn how to interact or maybe work with modules. Modules, these are like code libraries, because you might have a program that is going to take thousands lines of code. So if you have one file that contains all those code, then it's not going to be easier to manage. So if you understand how to work with modules, so you can create a simple components, and then I just import it where you want to use. So this one is going to help you have manageable things or components. So these things, when you master, then I think you are good. You are better than someone who has learned each and every aspect in Python and can't do anything. So provided you just have that roadmap, then there are other things you will be understanding as you progress, as you try to do projects will understand that, for example, in a list, to join lists, you can use this particular method to join lists, to combine, or maybe to remove an item in a list, and all those kind of things. You will be trying to understand them as you progress. This is to address the beginners, like if you are just new into programming or maybe web technology, okay, like in programming generally. So I want to give you some slide. But then, guys, I want you to be writing your short notes. I've tried to create here some slide, but remember, for me, content, I don't script content to give you. So I might say something that I don't have it in the slides. So you might be writing your short notes, so that, but the recording will also be provided. But I don't script. We don't, just a second. So just a second. So I said, so like there's a lot that I'm going to give you that are not included in these slides. So if you are a good student, you might be having your notebook and then write some key things that you might pick out, but the recording will be provided as well. So so basically we are going to learn like at the basics on Python. I told you I gave you like what you need to do, for example, to master programming language. And Python, I said it is more an object oriented, like nearly everything in Python is like an object. If you create something like a list, it's going to be considered as an object. A variable you assign it a value is going to be considered like Python is generally like an object oriented. So this way you need to understand how to create variables, variable, how like the naming conventions well, and then also understand the data structures, understand functions, and understand classes and objects, and also their characteristics, and then you will be good to go. So guys, I want us to begin by first of all understand what is Python. Python is a programming language, and I don't want to repeat what is a programming language. This one is a very popular programming language because it has a lot of community support. It's an open source programming language, so it has a lot of community support, and it's one of the oldest, programming languages. So it has built a very huge community, and the syntax for Python is very, very easy. Let me see what here it is here in this slide, but yeah, it has a lot of, and it can be used like in many things. It can be used on web, data science. Remember, data science is like what we are learning, machine learning and artificial intelligence. But then you need also to understand the data science life cycle, including accessing data, the cleaning data, doing the data wrangling, doing the analysis, the ADA, exploratory data analysis, creating the visuals to understand the data distribution, to know what kind of model to use, and then to model deployment. So it is generally the data science lifecycle, and then also to artificial intelligence and all that. So it can be used like in many things, including the system scripting, those who are into hacking or what kind of those kind of stuff. Like it has many use cases. And I'm going to begin by first of all understanding how we can write like variables, or how to define variables as we progress. And first of all, I told you that these things, you can't write them direct on the CLI. We tried the other time. It was a bit complex to write like many lines of code in or maybe working on a CLI, and in the event, for example, you have a program that wants many lines of code, is going to be inconvenient. That's why we need to use specific IDEs. And for this case, we are using the Jupyter Notebook. This is specifically for data science and artificial intelligence and machine learning stuff. Otherwise, for example, if you are into web, I could suggest Visual Studio Code, or maybe strictly, or maybe focusing on the software development, you could choose PyCharm, or maybe VS Code still. Or we have these specific IDEs, but then for specific tasks. But then for artificial intelligence and machine learning, and also the deep learning, and then the notebooks are very best in our case. Now, how are the variables defined in Python? You know, in other programming languages like JavaScript, you need to declare first of all a variable. For example, if it's a constant, if it will be dynamic, you'll use keywords like a var or let. But then in Python, it's very easy. Like values. Okay, variable is created as soon as you assign a value to it. Like, for example, when you say, for example, let me use symbol words, okay, symbol variable names, like A. Let me confirm if you are still able to see the notebook.
Yes, we can still see your notebook, Mr. Nehemiah.
All right, thank you so much. So now, for example, when you assign a value, for example, when you create this variable like this A, and then you assign a value to it, so you give it 10. So this one you have already created a variable. So you don't need to have to use things like const or const, and then also you say, for example, things like a var or let. So this one, as long as you have assigned a value to a variable, then you are good. Like that variable is automatically created. And I remember this equal operator in this case, you are not equating A to 10. You are assigning the value 10 to A. So in short, variables are like containers for storing data values. The same way you can have, for example, someone tells you like, give me a cup of coffee. Okay, give me a cup of what? Cup of tea. They don't mean that you give them like an empty cup for tea. They mean you give them tea, but then in a cup. So that cup, you're using it to reference the content of in that cup. So it's like just the container for what is in that cup. So when you say, for example, a cup of tea, they mean like they want tea within that cup. So the same way, like for variables, like they are just containers. They don't, like it doesn't mean like it is 10. It's not 10. Like at this A, we are not equating to 10. It's not 10. But then we are just assigning this value to this variable, like A, so that when you reference, when you say A, you will be referring to this 10. So it's just a container for storing data values. And for example, to write a program, for example, to execute anything here at the terminal, or maybe at the output here, you use the function called print. Use the function called print, like when you pass here this A, then you can see now the output we are getting here 10. So we have instructed the computer to do what? To print out the value of A. And the Python is very semantic. Like their syntax are almost similar to English. Like you can tell something print, it is related to getting an output or maybe a visual to see something. Like in a layman context. So it's very, very semantic. And to print, like to create variables, I've told you, you do it this way. And this is an integer. And let me talk about, first of all, the syntax in Python before we proceed. So something about Python. Python is sensitive to cases. Python, it is very, very sensitive to cases. Now, for example, if I've defined now my variable with a value, okay, I've defined my variable with small a, then I want to print out capital A, it's going to consider this capital A as something else. So it's sensitive to cases. When I run, I'm going to get here an error that A is not defined because small a and capital A, Python is going to consider or treat it as different, values. So it's very sensitive to cases. You need to know that. Another thing about Python also, we are going to talk about something about the conditional statements, loops, and all that, function and all that. But we have something called indentation. Indentation, like the space that I usually write between the edges. The edges, for example, if you are having a book, you have those place where you usually begin to write your content in your book. So the space that you leave before you begin to write now your notes or whatever it is, that's the indentation or maybe the space. So in this case, the indentation, like this white space, this space you see before you write your first character or whatever it is, that space is called indentation space or just a white space. So it's very sensitive to these things. It's very sensitive to the indentation. Like you can notice when I try to just add in some space here, I'm getting this error that there's an unexpected indentation. Like we are trying to add in this indentation in there, it wasn't supposed to be there. So it's very sensitive to these matters indentation. Of course, there are some things like the loops, conditional statement, functions, method, classes that you need to have the indentation. You need to have the indentation in them. When we reach there, we are going to explain. Now, something still on the syntax. Now, in programming or maybe in this software engineering or maybe data science or coding generally, or programming generally, most of the time you'll not be working alone. You'll be having a team of developers. That's why we are trying to build here a team or maybe a community of. That's why we have that Telegram so that we can easily interact with one another. So most cases you'll not be working alone. Like for example, you see these big platform tech platforms like Twitter, YouTube. It's not a one-person thing. Like we have many developers. So it's all about collaboration to achieve a specific goal. And if you are collaborating with another person, they will need to understand your code. Otherwise, so that, for example, when they want to add in their input, it will not override or maybe destroy your work. So we have something called comments, and you can use comment to just comment your code or maybe just explain your code. It's not like it will be executed. Like a Python is going to ignore comments. And the comments in Python are defined with the hash. So you begin with the hash. You begin with the hash. Then, for example, you can add in your comment. For example, let me just use an example like this is a comment. So, for example, when I say, for example, print whatever, print something like a text, like, for example, a hello world, then you can see there's a comment is ignored. This comment is ignored. But then, for example, when I remove it, and then I remove that hash, then I run plain like that, you can see I'm getting this error because you have not told Python to ignore this statement, this line. So you need to tell Python to ignore this line because to tell it like this one is a comment, like I just to explain your code, because in most cases you'll be writing like a main lines of code. And I told you, okay, let me show you an example of like a lines of code that you'll be writing like this symbol application. And then you notice that in some cases you might have like many lines of code. So someone new will not understand what, for example, this class is trying to do or what have you. So you need to explain if you are collaborating with other people, like for example, here you can add in a comment like the earth radius in kilometer and all that. So these are what we call the comments. Like they're just used to like explain your code. They are not that you know, they are very significant by the. In fact, also you yourself, you might write a program today, and then for example, 5 years you'll want to update your code base, and then you might find it difficult to understand your code unless you have these comments. So it's going to like help you a lot to understand your code. And in the event, for example, you want to add in several comments, you might have multi-line comments. Like you just want to write like a very detailed, you know, very detailed documentation or doc string, or maybe comments about your code. Like you can see this print function. When I click on shift and then tab, you can see I have these notes. So someone new can easily click on the shift tabs and then understand what this function is coming. So this is a built-in function in Python. And then you can see it tells you like this function prints the values to a stream, and that there's a lot of more information about that. So this is an example of a doc string. We are going to talk about that one as well, but then you can know the significance of those comment or doc string. And we are going to explain also in a few. So in Python, remember a single comment, a single hash, just a single hash. to show that it's a comment. So like a Python doesn't have, like I know in other languages, programming languages, you might have like a shorthand for creating the multi-line comments. Like for example, if it is something like a CSS, you could have say a / something like a / then asterisk, and then at the end you add in asterisk, and then a /, then it's going to like make everything under it a comment. But then in Python, it doesn't have that syntax for that, for doing like for making the multi-line comment. So if you want to create comments, you need to do it. You need to begin a hash in each and every line, of your code where you want to add in a comment, or perhaps even at the end of your statement, you can as well add in the comment like this. So Python is going to ignore these comments, and then it's not going to execute. But because Python usually ignore the string literals, you can do what, you can create a multi-line doc string. Okay, you begin like with the either single or double quotes. Okay, single or double 3 pairs. Like this single quote, this is double, but then they should be three, and then you also add in the closing with the same 3. For example, if you're using the double, should be 3 at the start, also 3 at the end. Then, for example, when you add in, for example, this is a first line, this is the second one, and then and so forth, blah, 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 whatever. So because Python usually ignore the string literals, like string literals, these are like strings that you have not assigned a variable to it, like you have not created a variable for it. So Python is going to ignore. So when I run this one, it's going to automatically ignore these parts. So you can use it in the event, for example, you want to like document your work, or maybe have multi-line comment. For example, if you don't want to begin a hash in every line, you can have that. You can use the string literal. So Python is going to ignore the string literals. String literals, these are like strings that are not assigned to a variable, like there's no variable which is assigned to it. So you could do what, you could add in this kind of thing. Then it's still going to explain your code. So these are string literals. Remember, they are not comments. Python is just ignoring it because it's not assigned to something. But just know that for comments, if someone asks you what is, or how is Python comments defined, just know that it is defined with the hash. But then you can use multi-line documentation or a comment by using these string literals, which is defined with either double or a single 3 pairs of quotes opening and that they're closing. Then Python is going to automatically ignore. Yeah, let me know if we are still together, guys.
Okay, hi, Mr. Nehemiah. So before we
Hello.
continue, can you hear
Yes,
me,
yes.
Mr. Nehemiah?
I can hear you.
Okay, before we continue, can we just like, guys, are you getting it in the comment section? I'm saying yes, yes, yes. So maybe you guys can just, for evaluation purpose, maybe just write a comment and write a line of code that ignores a particular thing, because I'm also following, so that I will know that most of us are following. So let's use our comment section to do that. Mr. Nehemiah,
Yes.
is that fine?
Yeah, that's very fine. And by that, that's very
Okay.
important. And by the way, guys, that's very important. Also, it just tell that I have I have people at the background, because I can notice that these are online things. Because there's a moment that I once taught some people for almost 20 minutes, and I noticed that I was alone in the class. I was talking to the computer. So these feedback are very, very important. Just know that I have people at the background and that they are following. So keep those
Exactly.
comments. Yeah, keep those comments coming, and in case you don't get everything clear, you can just ask, and then because I can't see well the charts, then Aisha can just inform me, then I'll address the issue. So keep it active, the comment section. Now, so this is just the basic syntax on Python. Before I talk about now the variables in details. Now, about variables, in most cases, you will not be writing this A, B, C, D, or X, Y, Z to create your variables. You might want to be descriptive for your variables. I said it's a good practice to be descriptive so that a new person, because you'll be collaborating with other people, when you use things like I, A, B, C, people will not understand what you are trying to do. And also it will also tell you're not a professional. You're not, like you're trying to achieve the results, but then that's not a professional way on how you can do it when you use things like A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, W. So you need to be descriptive. For example, for example, if you want to create a variable for, let's assume it's name, you use something like a name, something descriptive instead of something like a or something like that. You want to use something a descriptive like name. And I remember the strings are defined in quotes, either single or double quotes. Like this is going to be a string. Like when I say, for example, my name, you'll forgive me to use my name here. Let me use my name here, Nehemiah. So this is a string, and this is a string. When I print, I'm going to get what the output, which is Nehemiah. So here, remember, it's the same as. Okay, let me first of all, let me cut this one so that you understand. So now, when I pass here, for example, when I try to print Nehemiah, I pass here my value like a Nehemiah directory here. So I'm still going to get a Nehemiah here. But then for variables, the significance of variables, you assign like you create a container. You are just assigning this value to a short name or a variable so that you can just pass here. So this one is just referencing this Nehemiah. The same thing as you could have passed the value Nehemiah here. So this now the variable. I told you it's like the container for storing the data value. So these are data value. And this data value or a data type is called a string. When you pass here, it's going to execute like a string. These are like a text content. And remember, not all the text content are strings. We have like a string data type. We have things like the booleans. We are going to talk about them in a few. But strings are defined this way. Strings are defined this way, but in this context, I want to try to explain like more about the variables. So there are some rules that you need to follow whenever you're trying to create variables in Python. There are some rules that you need to consider or follow when you're trying to create the variables. First of all, when you're creating like a multi-line variable or whatever kind of variable it is, multi-word, sorry, not multi-line, multi-word variables. So for multi-word variables, there are some rules that you need to pay attention to when you're trying to create a variable. First of all, the rule number one about variables, let me see if I have that in the slide. Okay, it's not there. That's why I told you it's a good practice, for example, to write for yourself some short notes. So for variables, don't mind about this markdown command that I'm writing here. This just to explain. So the rules on variables that you need to follow when you are creating the variables, that the rule number one, variables cannot start with a number. Cannot start with a number. Variables cannot start with a number, which means that you can use a number anywhere, but it cannot start. It cannot start in your name. Like I cannot say like one name, like I show, for example, the first name, and then you print it this way. You're not going. You can say I'm getting this error because I cannot use one at the start, but you can use it here, perhaps at the end or in between or wherever it is, but it can't start for what? For a number, beta, float, or integer. So that's the rule number one. Then rule number two about the variables, it can either start with an underscore or a letter. A letter, those are A, B, C, D to Z. Those are letters. So it can either begin with with an underscore or a letter, which means that any other special character is not considered. Like, for example, if you say first name, you say, for example, first, then a space name to show that it's your first variable, and then you try to print this variable. You notice that I've done what I've used here, special character. You know, even this space is a character in Python. So this one, I'm going to get an error because you cannot use any other special characters apart from like you can either start, okay, like this in the event, like you are starting. Let me explain on the starting. For example, you can either start with the character this, like a B, C, D, A, F, whatever it is, or an underscore like this, or an underscore like this to define your variables. But you cannot use something else like a hyphen or what have you, any other special, apart from, it can either start with either an underscore or a letter. So those are the rules that you need to also adhere when you are creating your variables, especially multi-word variables. Then another thing about the variables is that the variables can only contain the alpha, can contain the alpha, the alphanumeric character, alphanumeric, characters like those that begins. Okay, alphanumerics. Okay, let me first of all finish on underscore. And by the way, guys, sometimes when I talk and type, I may type something here. So in case you point out something, just know that it's by mistake. In case I write something that doesn't make sense, just know that it is some small mistake. So variables can either contain the alphanumerics, which means that like the 1, 2, 3 to 9, 0, 1, 2, 3 to 9, or characters like A, B, C, D, up to Z, or the underscore. Remember also, even if it allows or can only contain the alphanumeric, which includes numbers. Remember, for numbers as well cannot start, but it can be used anywhere. For numbers, it can be used anywhere apart from the start. But for generally, you can use the numbers anywhere, but not at the start. And the characters A to Z, small or a capital, and at the underscore. So when you try to use something else we demonstrated earlier, it will not work. For example, when you say something like plus or whatever, it's not going to work. Then the last, okay, not last, like it's sensitive to cases. I told you this one earlier. It is sensitive. It is case sensitive. They are case sensitive. Okay, sensitive. They are case sensitive. Like a capital and small, they are going to be considered something else. So if I begin here with the capital, and then I print out small, I'm going to get what an error that first name is not defined. You notice there's an error, there's a typo here. So it should be first name. So these are the things that I was talking about. When I talk and type, sometimes I have with these issues, but just know that it's just small mistake. First name. Yeah, like that. So you can see that it's not defined. So make sure that you are considering those cases. And then we have the built-in keywords in Python. So you cannot use a built-in keywords in Python. Cannot use built-in keywords in Python. Keywords in Python. Keywords like these are like things that are usually, for example, when you use something like a DEL or import, you don't need to understand this thing, guys. You'll know more as you continue, but make sure that, for example, if you are working on something, make sure that you're using something descriptive and unique. For example, when you use something like first name, you can just notice that, you can just guess that this one cannot be an inbuilt keyword in Python because it's something descriptive. It's something descriptive. But then, even though you have adhered to these rules, even though you have adhered to the rules on the variable names, you notice it could be an issue it could be an issue, even though you have followed all the rules. There's something that you need to pay attention, especially when you follow. In Python, when you go to the Python documentation, python.org, there's that part of the documentation. So there's part where we have the Python exceptional proposal, which recommends some way you need to follow when you are creating the multi-word variables. Like I can say, for example, I have my very first, okay, let me also include here, my very first variable. So you can see it is working, but who can tell me the issue here with this variable in the comment? Even though it has followed the rules, but then what could you see as something that's not good in this variable? In the comment, I want to see in the comment your feedback. Anything? What could be the problem? I know it has followed the rules, it's working fine, but then what is another issue that you can see in this variable? Yeah, someone has said too long. Great. Too long. Yeah, it should have a meaning. Yeah, it might be too long. Yeah, very true case. Yeah, case. Yeah, yeah. So your suggestion are very true. Okay, are very correct. And then another thing is it is not readable. You can see because I'm the one that have written this variable, I can easily read my first variable, my very. In fact, you can see I'm also struggling to read it, and I'm the one that I've written my very first name, my very first name. So even though it has adhered to the rule, it's not readable. It's not readable because it's very long. It's very long, and being long it doesn't mean like it's not good, but you also want to pay more attention to readability. You want to make sure that it is readable. So Python came up with some exceptional proposal, or maybe some proposal that you need to follow when you are creating the variables. So the first one, this one I'm not going to type. Not going to type, but you can write it down. So the first naming convention for a variable, we can use something called the camel case. Let's begin with the camel case. So for the camel case, let me first of all remove this very. For the camel case, this one, each word except the first start with a capital. So each word, like you can see, we have multi-word here, but then now each word, apart from the first word, begins with a capital, like my first, and then name here is going to begin with also a capital apart from the first one. So we have made this first, like these in the initial of the words to stand out so that you can at least try to read. So you can tell it's somehow readable because we have something that that have stood out. So these are F and then name, like it has stood out. Like initial of the words, apart from this, the first word will begin with the capital. So this naming convention is called what is called the let me type here. This is called the camel case naming convention, and I'm using the comment here. So this is camel case, like initials of the word begins with the capital, apart from the first word. And then now the second proposal is the Pascal case. Now for Pascal case, Pascal case, for the Pascal case, this one is similar to the camel case, but this one, including the first word, begins with the capital. Like the only difference, like on the Pascal case, like all the words in your variables begin with their capital. Like each word starts with their capital letter, and mostly these are used when you are creating the classes. When we reach to classes tomorrow, okay, on Monday, we'll talk more about that. So you can use it, for example, if you are creating the classes and all that. So this naming convention is called a Pascal case. Like it's just to make your work readable, or maybe your variable readable. So you can see, for example, if you have something like this, like you have something that have stood out, you can easily know what it is. Like if the event, for example, is a long word. And then the very last naming convention, it's called, sorry, my first, okay, yeah, I forgot to change it. Remember, it's sensitive to cases. All right, so the very last is snake case. Now for snake case, this one, like each word is separated with the underscore. And this one, it is recommended, for example, if you're using a capital, just capital. If it's small, it is just small. So for example, you can say, for example, my, and then it's separated, second one is separated with an underscore. And I remember the underscore in our rules can be used, right? The variables can be used. Okay, not the variable, the underscore can be used whenever you are creating the your variable. So in the naming convention, even though you are trying to apply this naming convention, still make sure that you are also following the rules there. So my first name. So you can see we are separating words. Just our work, like what we're trying to do is just to make our work much more readable. It's not about writing the code. It's about understanding, or maybe making your work more efficient or optimized, like very clean. Yeah. So this naming convention is called the underscore case, or other people call it snake case or underscore case. Or underscore case. So these are just some naming convention that you need to follow whenever you are creating the variables. Whenever you are creating the variables. So these are the naming convention whenever you're creating the variables. Let me know if guys everything is clear, or maybe you have a question there. Is anyone with a question? Okay, clear. That's great then. That's great. So this is just for assisting the beginners. I know we have experts here. They are wondering why are you telling us these things, but I want to accommodate even the beginners. But I know also as we progress, you'll be taking some 2 or 3 as we continue. So those are the naming convention for the variables. And then another thing that I told you, like whenever you are learning any language, you need to understand the data structures, the data types, data types, and all those data, data structures things. So basically in Python, we have different data types. You notice earlier I said that something is a string, something is a number, an integer, and all those things. So we have things, we call them a data type. I think this one I listed here. Let me see in my slide. So we have the data types. Let me try to maximize. Yeah, so we have data types in Python, and so we have data types in Python. So in programming, I said data types is a very, very important concept for a person to understand, and variables can store different data types. You noticed earlier that we could store an integer, we could store a string, and also we have other data types like a Booleans list and all that. So like in Python, they are categorized in different categories. Like for the text type, we usually use string, which is shortened with str. The syntax, okay, I don't know, the syntax is the str syntax for string, which is for like the text type. It is str, which is wrapped in quotes, either single or double quotes. And then for the numeric types that I did not list here, for the numeric type, we have the integer. We have the integer, which is shortened with int. The syntax is int. We also have another one called float. We also have another one called float. And then the complex, we are going to come to the codes in a few, and I'll be explaining those things. But I just want to list for you. And then we also have the sequence type. For the sequence type, we have things like list, dictionary. By the way, I think this one I didn't format this work well. Let me try to just write here. Let me just write on the notebook, because this one I didn't. So we have different type. So the text type, for the text type, we have strings, which is str, and then for the numeric type, types. The numeric types, we have things like int, integers, Remember, integers, these are like a positive numbers, negatives number. The whole number without the decimals can be either negatives or a positive, but without the decimal, those are integers. And then the real numbers, the floating point numbers, it's also a number, but the syntax is this way: float. Float, these are numbers now with the decimal, be it negative or positive, but has the decimals. And also we usually have another one called complex, though it's rarely used, but it's useful for those who are into physics to understand those. Those kind of things. You can use the complex. It's also a number, but I will not be using mostly this one, the complex, but it's also part of the numeric data type in Python. The sequence type, we have things like lists, which are used to store collections, which are used to store one or more data type, and their characteristics is like the order. I'm going to explain its characteristics in a few, but let me just list. We have in the sequence type, we have the list, we have the tuples as well. We also have the range, and then for the mapping type, we have things like a dictionary, which is defined with the dict. And then we also have the Boolean types, Boolean types, which are defined with the bool keyword. And it we have the true or false. Like basically, these are just true or false, output or statements. And then we have the binary types, like a byte array, memory view, and all that. Those are the non-type. It's also a data type, but these are the most commonly used. But we have also, okay, let me just list. We have binary types. The binary types, we have bytes. Byte array, will not be using it at the moment. I don't want to complicate things. Byte array, memory view. Memory view also is a binary types. Then remember, computer, I told you, doesn't understand numbers. So these are computer languages. Like I was trying to use this one to, for example, to understand, for example, the length, or maybe the size, or maybe the memory that your code, for example, is trying to take in all that. I don't want to go into that. But we also have a non type. Also, none is a type. A non type, for example, something like empty or null is also a type. So it is non type. Non-type. And how do you check a data type of something, of a value? To check a data type, in function, okay, in Python, you usually use the type function. For teaching, guys, allow me to use X because I don't want to write a lot. Let me have a number like 100. Then when I print, this one is returning what? X is returning 100. But then now, if I want to know what kind of a data type it is, then I'll use now a function called type inside this print statement. Type, and then remember, functions in Python, they must have the quote, not quotes, they're called what? Brackets. The brackets. Like any function or methods in Python, they must have the parentheses. So if it's a print function, you notice that it has these brackets, the rounded brackets. And also a type is a function, so it needs to have the rounded brackets. Then here you are trying to pass in the object, or maybe the data type, the value that you want to check now. The type. In this case, this one is referring to this number 100. So you can notice that the output here is returning int. And I told you that almost everything in Python is like an object. That's why I can say I have here class int. When though it's just a symbol, a variable, but then it's going to be considered as an object. So literally, almost everything in Python can be considered as an object. Is an object oriented basically. And then if I change here to a decimal, for example, 100.5, then the output you can now see it is a float. Now, if you introduce an imaginary part j, these are complex. We are not going to talk about this one. So these are complex. This is on the numeric type. For the text type, I said we have strings, and which are defined in quotes. Like anything that you wrap it in quotes is going to be considered as a string. Like, for example, hello world is going to be considered as what? It's going to be considered as a string. And then, so these are string, the text type, and that the booleans like a true, false is a boolean, false as well is a boolean, false is also a boolean. Their syntax is bool. And then we have other types like for sequence type, like the list, which is defined with the square brackets, then you can add in the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there's going to be a list, then a tuples, you define it this way. Guys, I intended to like cover some bits, I intended to cover most of the fundamentals or basics on Python, but I feel like for beginners, it's trying to get, it's going to be much. It's going to be much. So guys, I'm going to just list for you these things, then we can extend path to next week, so that we can finish the remaining part, especially the data structures. It's a very, very important concept for people to understand the data structures. And then also we'll talk about the functions and the objects. But know that Python, for example, if you want to learn Python, like you just want to learn everything, it will take even more than 5 years. But provided you have that roadmap, you know the variables, how to work with variables, these are data structures, and that the function in classes, if it's an object-oriented, then you have an idea on how you can do. But there, in this generation where we have the artificial intelligence, we have this generative AI. So in case, for example, you are stuck and you just know the roadmap, you can easily get other things as you progress. So don't strain so much to learn each and everything in Python. Just have that roadmap. Just know how to work with variables, how to work with the data structures, how to work with functions and modules, and also how to deal with if it's an object-oriented like a Python, how to work with the classes, methods, and also to create the objects from a class and all that. So guys, so these are tuple, and that is how you check the type. And quickly, I want to show you how you can convert one type to another. I want to quickly show you how you can convert one type to another. Remember, for detailed explanation about these data types, especially the data structures, the lists, tuples, dictionaries, sets, and all that, we'll explain. I think we'll just have to do it on Monday, because I don't want to like pile things for beginners, but I just want to demonstrate a quick way on how you can change from one type to another, type conversion. So we have direct type conversion, which is called casting. Like when you try to like change one data type to another, like at the variable definition. Like for example, let's say you have, before that, let me begin with the type conversion. The type conversion. So for example, you have a type, let's call it A. It's a number, is an integer. When you print out, you'll find out that it's what? It is, when you print the type, this one it's an integer. Like I just want to use it to demonstrate. When you pass here A, the output is going to be int, because it's a whole number. Remember, it also takes the negatives. If a number is negative, but it's a whole number, it's considered it's an integer. But if it's a decimal, it has a decimal in it, it's going to be considered a real number, or maybe a floating point number. Now, let's say we have this number 100, and then we have already defined a number, a variable. Okay, we have defined a variable A, then we have assigned the value to it. Then later we do what? We change it to like, for example, A, okay, or let's get B, another variable B. But then for this variable B, the value is going to be A. Remember, when I pass here A, in other words, I mean that I'm passing here this 100, because you know A is like A is like 100. So when I say B is A, I mean 100, because we know A is 100. So when I pass here, okay, let me first of all try to run. I pass here A, you'll notice that I'm going to get still 100 because this is just a view, B is just a view of A when I do it this way. So it is what? It is an integer, but then you can use a constructor to do it, to convert it to another data type. So it is initially an integer, but then I can use a constructor like float. Then you write it in quotes. Is a function, so you write it in not quotes. Sorry, guys. You write it in rounded brackets. And then you can pass in what your object or your variable here. And then now you notice that the output here is going to change to float. So this process is called type conversion, where you are converting one data type to another. And I remember for numbers, you can work with numbers, but then you cannot convert a string. Like just try to think logically. Like for example, you cannot have something like A, B, C, D, and then you want to convert it to a number. It cannot make sense. So you cannot convert a string to a number. You cannot convert a string to a number, but you can convert a number to a string. Because provided you wrap anything in quotes, it's going to be considered as a string. So that one you can easily convert, but you cannot convert a string to a number. You get an error. So basically, that's how this type conversion, where you had an original or maybe a different data type defined in separate variables. Then later along the process, you convert it to another data type. So this process is called type conversion. But then we also have casting. Casting, this is in the event, for example, at the variable definition level, like for example, when you say, let me use X, you are trying to directly convert like at the variable definition level. For example, you say int, you know that 100.5, this is a floating point number, but then remember at the variable definition, you are automatically, like at that time, you are giving it or maybe you're specifying the data type, you are converting that. Like all this type conversion and casting, you're converting one type to another, but then this process where you had an originally defined variable for a particular data type, then you later convert it to a new data type. So this process is type conversion, and that is casting. Casting, this is the event you are trying to convert one data type to another, but at the variable definition. Remember here, I don't have another data type that I'm trying to pass here to convert it. Like at this one, I'm just trying to convert it at the variable definition level. So when I pass here print X, you notice that I'm going to get what? An int, okay, an integer, though the value is what? Floating point number when I pass here X. So this process is called casting. This is in the event, for example, you're converting one type to another, but then at the variable definition level. But then for this type conversion, you had an originally defined data type in a variable. Then you later, along the process, you converted it to another data type. So this type conversion, and this is casting. This is casting. But there, guys, I remember that Python is dynamic. Python is dynamic. For example, when you say Python variables are dynamic. For example, when you say A is 100, then we say again A is 200, and then you print. When you print A, the output is going to be 100. Okay, let's try to print it twice, so that someone will think that, for example, the first one we're trying to print, the first one, and then this is the second one. So you can notice that I'm getting 200 to 200, this one, because Python is dynamic. For example, if you had defined a variable, then later you assign it a new value, and then it's going to use the latest. So that's something that you need to know. So guys, I think I need to end it here. I have a feeling that someone might get confused, a beginner. So let me know, first of all, if everything is okay up to this point. Have you understood everything? You have a question or anything, let me know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nehemiah. I don't know if anyone has a question we can ask using the comment section, or maybe I should unmute so that some people can actually ask their question. So what you would do for me is that you would just tell me in the comment section that you want to ask a question, then I would call your name, then you would ask your question. Okay. So Edith said it's clear. This is already 3:33, so we are close to the end of this class. So if anyone has a question, please let's use the comment section and say we have a question. If there is no question, okay. Femi is saying that Omo is looking all new to me. We need to go through all the videos. Yeah, Femi, that's why we have the videos uploaded on YouTube so that you can go through them again. Also, I always advise that you also check in extra materials after the class, right? So yeah. I don't know, Mr. Nehemiah. Mr. Nehemiah,
Yes.
yeah, please you can continue. I think we can
Hello.
just stop the section by. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Hello, are you able to
Femi
hear
has
me?
a question. He said, my other question is that do we start with applying this stuff or how do we know how to use them? Did you get that
Can you
question?
perhaps try to, or your question, or maybe the one that is asked in the comments? My other question is that do we start with applying this stuff, or how do we know? How do we use them? So guys, I want you to learn first of all these things that we have taught you, but I'm going to provide the code challenges, so that you can try to do what we've covered today. But I believe by the next class we'll try to at least go deeper so that you will see the use case. Like we'll be trying to create some to work on some projects or a mini project to create some algorithms and all those stuff. But this was just an intro. We'll have another class next time where we'll have some examples, some descriptive or maybe some kind of projects like those mini projects so that you understand better. But for this one, we are going to give you like some tests. We are going to give you some tests just to help you. Okay, like just to see if you've understood the concept that we've learned today, but at the basics that we've just talked about today, for example, on the strings, variables, type conversion, and all that. But more content will come Monday where we'll try to at least build something and work on some mini projects. Those are small projects just to help you understand how you can use this syntax and in an actual or maybe in a real world scenario.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nehemiah. Femi, does that answer your question? You can unmute. I think I have given everybody the permission to be able to talk now.
Okay, actually, good afternoon. That's my question to a point. Although it's kind of all still new because I've actually gotten introduced to something like this before. But my main issue is how to apply and how to make it stick, because these are there are a number of codes, a number of stuff that we have to keep learning them. So to start creating a project can be an issue.
Okay, so I think what Mr. Nehemiah said was that on Monday, you guys will have like a practical section where he's showing you the application of all these concepts, right, Mr. Nehemiah?
Yes. And also we have something that you'll need to use, for example, some conditional statement as well. For example, you want to, I know, for example, you try to, to work on something. I know you have ever tried to sign up to a particular system. And then, for example, if the condition is true, perhaps for example, if you have added like the correct username and password, you'll be authenticated. If not, you'll get another error. So things like that, we'll try to implement to understand how to work with the conditional statement and also the loops and these are data structures in detail such that you can try to do something detail. Like today it was that beginner, like a very small bit, but as we progress, at least now the project will be a bit deeper because at the moment you cannot work on something great that you haven't learned yet, like the concept that you haven't learned, you can't use them to do something. So when we learn them perhaps on Monday, then we try to do something cool with it. Once we've learned the data structures, we've learned the conditional statements, we've learned the loops, the functions, classes, and methods, then we'll be able to work on our projects. Remember, from Monday onwards, each class, in fact, even this one, you're going to have a test, some small tests, but then from Monday onwards, it will be code challenges. We'll be having the code challenges. You'll be using the skills that we are teaching now to solve the problem that I will be giving you. Just to make sure that you are understanding the concepts here. It's not about understanding or maybe cramming the syntax. Will be similar to those university students who just understand those, for example, what do you call it, like the founder of computers, things like that, like the origin of variables, things like that. But then you want to have like a real world scenario, the use case of these things, or a practical use case of these things. So these projects are going to help us like use the skills that we are acquiring to do something. So don't worry about there are going to be many. In fact, there are going to be many code challenges and some mini projects, small projects, I mean, yeah. Yeah, so I think it's clear, right?
Thank you very much, Mr. Nehemiah. So moving on to the next thing. I think, Mr. Nehemiah, that's the lectures for today, right? I can move on to making my announcement and talking about every other thing, right?
Yes, I'm done. And also, remember, pay attention to the community. We'll post there the code challenge. We'll post there the code challenge. So pay attention to the community, and then yeah. So I think that's all for today. I think, yeah. Thank you so much, and I hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, guys, I said it at the beginning. For people that are not here, you can now send messages in the community. Some of you were complaining that you couldn't send messages in the community. Now everybody can now send message in the community. Also, Mr. Nehemiah will share the assignments with me, and you should check the community. I'll post the assignments there so that you can also do the assignment and submit in the community, right? I would also share the link tree in the community. Make sure that you are on the Telegram channel and you are following all our other social media channel, right? So that you'll be able to have access to all of our information. So yeah, that will be all for today. I think we finished early today. This is 3:40, but this is weekend. I know some of us have some other things to do. So the next class would be on Monday, the same time, right? And I would also share the link in the community like we used to do always. So the next class will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, till we finish this what's it called, bootcamp, right? So again, like I mentioned, feel free to post about your learnings on Twitter and LinkedIn and tag one dev. We would be very happy to repost to our network, and we would also love to reach more people that can get the advantage of this program that we are running, of this bootcamp that we are running. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Alain, Pascal. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Shanice. Thank you, Clancy. Thank you, Darling. Thank you, Edith, Elia, Femi Ado, Godfrey, Goodness, Ibrahim, Isaac, Kelvin, Martin, Munene, Mwema. Thank you, Nesh. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Safi. Thank you, Samsi Ateya. Thank you, Samuel Andrew. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Wilson. Thank you, Yara. Thank you, Davronx. Thank you, everyone, for staying till the end. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on Monday, the same time, on this same platform. So yeah, this will be the end of today's class. I'll see you guys on Monday. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye. Asante sana. Asante. Bye. Bye, everyone. Yeah.